Welcome to the Sustainable Cleveland 2021 Virtual Summit. We would like to thank our host for the summit, the Cleveland Public Library. My name is Kathy Lan. I'm the Sustainable Cleveland Manager, and you've joined the Cleveland's Vacant Land, a resident's guide to land acquisition breakout session. Please use the chat box for questions or comments and for resources to be shared during this session. Our moderator for this session is Linda Warren. Linda is the Senior VP for Placemaking with Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Linda, it's all yours.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to be talking about vacant land, and we have four really distinguished presenters today. I'm going to take a minute and introduce each of them. Although I'll do a little overview in a second, but I'm going to tell you who's going to be presenting. Lindale Hinton, she's a redevelopment advisor at the City of Cleveland with the city's land bank reutilization program. And second will be Jason Knauer. He's the Housing and Land Reuse Program Manager with the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corp. Those two entities, the City of Cleveland's Land Bank and the county's land bank, control or manage over 25,000 vacant properties in the City of Cleveland. And then Erika Erivin, a Glenville resident, will talk about her experience, and we'll round it out with Marge, who is a community land trust consultant. So I'm going to just take 1 second to describe the oh, great, good. Well, I'm not because, well, yeah, I will. Sorry. At the last minute, I decided I was going to share some slides, and now for whatever reason, I'm having, oh, there it is. Okay. I was going to say I'm having some trouble making that work. So hopefully I can pull this up, even though, yes, I practiced several times. Sorry for my poor skills here. Okay, so really what I thought I'd take a minute and share, if people remember the program Reimagining Cleveland, this was something that Cleveland Neighborhood Progress launched in 2008, when at that time there were about 12,000 vacant lots in the city's land bank, and the county land bank was just getting formed. And the many machinations at the state to get this to happen at the county level were just happening. So Cleveland Neighborhood Progress has raised $2.5 million from various sources, philanthropy and the public sector, a large part of it coming through neighborhood stabilization program dollars at the federal level. And over a 7-year period, 132 projects were created on over 320 parcels. And if you remember, we issued a couple guides. One was called Reimagining Cleveland, Ideas to Action, that were looking at the various projects that could happen on vacant land. And again, this was promulgated really by an awareness that on any given street, there were these random vacant parcels that were literally being seen as liabilities, but could easily be transformed into assets. And what was really impressive is that this group of people who came together and really activated this program around reimagining a more sustainable Cleveland, looked at these various parcels and created multiple pilot projects, really, with champions all over the city of Cleveland. And we had vineyards, orchards, market gardens, community gardens expanded beyond the city's summer sprout program. The side yard expansions that happened next to people who owned a property and wanted to expand their own yard. Street edge improvements, pathways through neighborhoods, which were really well-defined enhancements to places people are already using as a pathway, some pocket parks and native plantings, and many, many rain gardens. And our goals at the time were really to stabilize those parcels, beautify them, bring in some greening, and build community, because this was done through really a lot of community engagement across Cleveland's neighborhoods. So we are, I just thought it would be a good overview that I didn't think of beforehand, but thought I would add, because it really was an army of resident engaged individuals who championed all those projects that I just referenced. So with that, we're going to launch into the first presentation by Lindale Hinton. Again, she's with the city's land bank, and I think, Lindale, you the city manages about 14,000 parcels today, right? It's somewhere in that range.
Yeah, that's pretty much. It's a little bit more like 16,000. Yes.
Thank you. We'll take it away.
Thank you. All right. So hello. As you've heard, my name is Lindale, and I am a redevelopment advisor in the city of Cleveland's Land Bank Reutilization Program. I've been with the Land Bank for about 4 months now, and it has been a wonderful experience doing my part in giving back to the community and helping to maintain a more sustainable Cleveland. One of the ways I'm doing this is by processing applications and deeds for the successful sale and leases of vacant lots. So be patient with me. This is my first actual summit. So I wasn't too sure of how I wanted to put it together and how many, what I wanted to say or what I even needed to say. So I put together rather a short presentation to explain basically what we do here in the Cleveland Land Bank Department. Next slide, please. So at the City of Cleveland, in our department, the City of Cleveland's Land Reutilization Program is designed to acquire vacant land and market it to individuals, developers, and nonprofit organizations for redevelopment. The goal is to contribute to the economic, social, and betterment of the city through redevelopment of city-owned property or city-owned land. The land bank application process ensures that vacant properties are transferred to responsible parties committed to restoring productive areas or property to productive areas or to productive use, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have my coworker Marge here with me as well. So she'll go ahead and chime in here and there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Lindale. My name is Marge Garrett. I'm a former redevelopment advisor and currently an administrator here in Community Development, Division of Neighborhood Development and Real Estate and Public Improvement. The examples she was speaking of to redevelop property are examples like public use, community gardens, pocket parks, and other community beautification projects, reading gardens, things like that. Our most popular redevelopment use are yard expansions.
Yeah, and with that, so with yard expansions or any project that you may have, if you're interested in submitting an application to purchase or lease the lot, the applicant must, well, one of the things that they have to do is submit an application. So written applications must be submitted to the land bank office and outline the details of their proposals. So basically, when you submit your application, you would have to submit a brief diagram or image of what it is you intend to do with the land. The application, it's important to note that each land bank application has its own guide. So if you're looking to develop on it, or if you're looking to expand your yard space, there are multiple applications depending on what it is you intend to do with it. So knowing what you want to do with it will help to identify which application you need. And each application, like I mentioned, has specific guidelines that you must follow in order to be eligible. Procedures. I think it's something that I'm missing in there. Well, no, basically each application has their own set of policies and procedures. So here I just listed a brief description of the application process. So a lot of misconceptions with the land bank applications have been that as soon as you put an application in, within 2 weeks, you should hear something back. That is a huge misconception. As you see, there's multiple steps and departments that the application must go through prior to the exchange of deeds. So the general application process requires the applicant complete a land bank application, including the required information and site plans. Then my team and I will review them for completeness and eligibility. To be eligible, the applicant must have no violations on any property owned in the city of Cleveland. They must have current rental registrations for each property owned in Cleveland. And the taxes must be current on all properties owned in Cleveland. Then the proposal is evaluated to determine if the development is suitable for the neighborhood. And that is, if you see the third bullet point, so that's around that third bullet point. It goes, well, between the second and the third. It goes to the council members and the board, and they actually meet on the proposal. So then we go into the next one. The council person for the area is informed of the proposal, and comments from the City Planning Commission and Area Community Development Corporation are all gathered.
And I'd like to add that the comments of the council person, City Planning Commission, and Community Development Corporations weigh heavily on the approval or disapproval of the application.
And then finally, the administrative approvals are obtained, a deed is prepared for signature, and the property is transferred to the interested party. And that's granted is approved. If it's not approved, then of course we will contact the applicant and explain the conditions that may have prevented it. Next slide, please. To the next slide, please. Thank you. So in closing, told you it was a short one. The Land Bank has worked with numerous community development corporations and residents in strategies to transform distressed areas throughout the city with yard expansion and the installation of attractive public green spaces. The project helped to strengthen the community by engaging residents in the design, the development, and the maintenance phases of the projects, restoring a deep sense of pride throughout the community. So basically everything, if you notice on the slides at the bottom of the thing, at the bottom of each slide, I put our contact information. So should you have any questions or are looking to expand your yard or create or develop beautiful green space, feel free to contact us. You have our address, phone number, fax, and everywhere, email address, anything, all the avenues of contacting us. Also, we have this information on our website, which is clevelandohio.gov. Again, that's www.clevelandohio.gov. And with that, I am done, unless Marcia has something she want to contribute.
Well, it's nice seeing you. Some of you I recognize in the names. So Erika, I knew you as Erika AC in the past when we worked together. I recognize Jason's name, so it's nice seeing you guys.
And for me, it's nice meeting everybody. I look forward to working with you guys.
Same here.
Thank you, Lindale and Marcia. We really appreciate your presentation. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jason Knauer. And Jason, I realize that normally the county land bank transfers vacant land to the city where there is an existing land bank at that municipality. But I know because of some funding, the county land bank sits on some land for 3 years before it gets transferred over. Is it accurate to say that if the city of Cleveland has 16,000 parcels, you're sitting on 9, or are some of those 9,000 also privately held?
My guess is that some of those are privately owned. I don't know the exact number of how many we own currently, but to your point, that funding source, so to take a step back, we had a very large pot of money from federal funds to do blight removal, so demolition of dilapidated properties. And with that funding, we had to hold the lots after the demo for a period up to 3 years, unless a eligible reuse comes about, which we'll talk about those eligible reuses in my presentation. But that funding compliance period has actually expired as of this summer. So we're actually in the process of transferring a very large bulk of our vacant lots to the city in large batches. So Lindale, apologies for all the work we're creating for you. But we are transferring out a lot of our properties.
And that's perfectly fine. I appreciate it.
So we can get into my presentation, and I'll go over some of the a lot of similarities with our process and the city's process, but there's a couple of distinctions that I will try to make as well. And so just to give a quick overview of what we'll be talking about, we'll go through the purpose of the Cuyahoga Land Bank, the life of one of our properties, different options for vacant land reuse, and how to apply. So the purpose of the land bank is to strategically acquire properties and return them to productive use. So most of the properties that we acquire generally have structures on them. And most of the properties that we get are through tax foreclosure. So they've been, vacant and abandoned for many years. And actually, if you could go to the next slide, I think it shows a little bit about how many properties, this is from a year or two ago, I believe, but how many properties have sort of flowed through the land bank. So we've, gone through over, I believe it's 11 or 12,000 at this point. But we've done many thousands of demolitions. We've also renovated properties. And as well, we've done some greening in side yards. Next slide. So this is a little bit of what I was talking about with how we acquire our properties. So most of them come from tax foreclosure, but we also get, some donations, some bank sales and HUD properties as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about that circled section at the bottom, the different programs that we offer for vacant land reuse. Next slide, please. So the land bank, most of our vacant land sales are side yard sales, which are, a neighbor that owns a property next to a vacant lot can apply to purchase it to expand their property. And we also do sales to nonprofit and for-profit organizations to do either greening projects or new development. Next slide, please. So for folks that are, whether it's next door to you or, down the street in the neighborhood, whatever, these are some resources to help identify sites. So these are both the city and county mapping sites where you can go to and you can search properties and identify whether, say, the Cuyahoga Land Bank or the City of Cleveland Land Bank owns it, as well as, helping to identify potential vacant lots in your neighborhood that you might be interested in doing a project on. And a lot of times the easiest way to do it is to just hit the streets and walk around or drive to find vacant lots, because a lot of times seeing it with your own eyes and recognizing whether there is water, say a fire hydrant nearby, or what the tree canopy is, what the shade is going to be, all of that stuff. So definitely getting out and hitting the streets is a great way to identify as well. Next slide, please. So the eligibility requirements are pretty similar to the cities. You cannot be tax delinquent on any property that you own throughout the whole county. Can't have any outstanding code violations. Can't have lost a property to tax foreclosure in the past 3 years. The applicant must be able to make and sustain improvements to the lot, and generally the city must give approval through your application, whether it be the council person or community development partners in the area. Next slide. Go through a few of our different applications. The side yard program is essentially if you own a property next door and there's a vacant lot that you would like to purchase to expand your property. Once the house is demolished, you can submit an application. And from there, we process it and send it to the city to be reviewed. They generally look at you as a homeowner to make sure that your property is in good standing order, and they let us know whether they approve. For owner occupants, so that's someone who lives in the house as their primary resident, vacant lots can be purchased as a side yard for $100. And investment property owners or landlords are also eligible to purchase, and the cost for that is $500. From there, we confirm that everything is clear with the title, and then we would be able to put together a purchase agreement and ultimately transfer the lot. Next slide, please. Nonprofits, we work with a lot of nonprofits, whether it be community development organizations, churches, or nonprofits like Erika, who will be speaking later. You can apply to purchase lots to do a reimagining essentially of the vacant lot, whether it be green space or new development or gardening. Essentially, we meet with the nonprofit to check out or get to know them, see what they're about, learn about their project, and then we ultimately go into an access agreement that allows the group to start their project. And once the project breaks ground, we then can transfer the property. Next slide, please. And then we also do for-profit land sales. So that's if there's a business that's looking to expand their business, whether it be parking or just expansion for green space for their business. We do have a process for that, and it's very similar, where we go into an access agreement and allow them to start the project. The main difference is that the cost of the property is based on fair market value. So we get a broker's price opinion from a third party to determine what the price is, and that's what the sale price would be. And we also are getting more into new construction, which is a little bit more of a process, but essentially you would need to have sort of finances and architectural or construction company ready to go. And at that point, we can take you through the process to do new construction if you're interested in that. Next slide. And so really we try to, just be a resource for county residents and businesses to really help navigate you into, finding what vacant land is available and what can be done with it. So just some reminders that, Cleveland is a national leader in urban gardening and has been for several years. The process to purchase land can sometimes be slow, but ultimately we do, really try to support residents and get the land in their neighborhood back to eligible use. So it can be slow, but we're on your side. And there are lots of different options that you can see here with schools and churches and neighborhood groups that are always looking to partner with residents in the area. And so that's always an option. But really one of the important things, with identifying vacant land is who the owner is, because as Linda did mention, there are several vacant lots in the county that are privately owned. And sometimes you may get approached, or you may approach the owners to purchase. You just need to be mindful that those properties may have stuff associated with them, whether it be liens or back taxes, that you want to make sure to always have a reputable title agency run a report on any property that you may be interested in. And then I believe that is it for me. I'll of course be available for questions at the end. But that's a pretty quick rundown of the Cuyahoga Land Bank.
Thank you, Jason. We really appreciate that. Great, thorough overview. Now we're going to hear from someone who's actually done some projects. Erika Erivin, a Glenville resident. Take it away, Erika.
Hello, you guys. My name is Erika Erivin, and I am a Glenville resident.
Erika's okay. Sorry, should have gone to the county? Okay, we'll let you go. Never mind. Sorry.
So you want me to go?
Yes,
okay.
Please. Sorry about that.
Okay. So my name is Erika Erivin, and I am a Glenville resident and founder of Gardening in the District nonprofit. And my nonprofit, the mission of the nonprofit is to cultivate and revitalize communities by providing residents and its youth with arts and culture support and educational learning opportunities for sustainable holistic health and wellness. Our vision is to envision a safe and equitable communities where youth are leaders, residents are physically healthy, and socially united. The nonprofit, we started the nonprofit about 8 years now. And with starting the nonprofit, this lot right here, 9811 South Boulevard, that was our very first lot that we revitalized. And in revitalizing this lot, it was a space to bring the community out, a space where we can gather, eat healthy, and have different events and programs and things like that. I started the first one in 2014, and it just took on a world of its own. And in this lot, we've had some great memories. And over the years, I felt like other communities should have a space like this to be able to hold events, to have workshops, to gather, do block watch, and give the kids a place in a community to just be able to hang out and make it safe. So in doing that, I felt the need to go into other communities and see if this was something that other communities wanted. And so we did a lot of walking around and talking with the communities and talking with neighbors, and they were very excited about the possibility of one of these lots coming into their community. So the process for that we did for these lots was first, we got a list of vacant lots from the city and the county. I've worked with a lot of these individuals on the line, and look to see where were they at in the different communities. And I'm sorry, and to see if they fitted and what we could do for those spaces. So we went around in a community and we talked to the different residents and we talked with everybody. We got flyers. We began to submit applications to the city and the county for the different lots in the different areas that we were interested in. And then we applied for funding. We did a lot of grants, crowdfunding. We had lemonade stands, car washes, different things like that in order to raise the money to be able to put the garden and the parks in these different communities. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Here with this lot, this is one of our this is our second lot that we did. And with this lot, it's actually two lots. One is from the city and one is from the county. And their process is totally different to get the lots. So one of the pictures shows the vacant lot, and the other picture shows the work that were done in these lots. With the nonprofit, we have a summer youth program, and we teach the summer youth how to garden and farm as a business. And so a lot of their input and time and work goes into helping to put these lots up for the community, along with the community and volunteers and things like that. So in each of the lots, they were designed with the needs of that community, what that community needed. This community right here, there's a school across the street from it, and it's a lot of parents that be outside, park their cars, and we wanted to make a lot of space available for the parents to be able to turn off the cars and sit and wait on the kids. So we put a lot of benches and picnic tables in this lot. We're also partnering with the school that's across the street from it, Citizens Academy, and we're super excited about that because they want to bring urban agriculture into the classroom. So they're going to come out and utilize the space. You can go to the next slide. This lot was designed more for kids. This street on North Boulevard, it's a lot of kids that played in the street and used the lots just to run around and do things. And so with designing this lot, we designed it for kids to have a lot of different activities. We put cornholes in there. We got chalkboards. We painted a mural on there to make it inviting and open to the community. Those are the community and my summer youth program out, putting up the fence and the picnic tables and things like that in the lot. And the kids, it gives them a space. I ride past the lot. I see the kids over there playing. We have workshops in there for them, different things like that to keep them involved and to keep them engaged. We have another lot. You can go to the next one. Okay, so we have another lot that has a farmer's market in there as well. We started that this year. It was super excited to do it and be able to bring access to food deserts in communities where they didn't have access to fresh vegetables as we would like. So some of the challenges that we faced in doing this was, well, I'm the type of individual, once I get started, I'll be ready to go. And so just the length of the time with the process of acquiring the lots, it can be lengthy. And so, when you're getting started and the community's ready and everybody's ready to, get the planting and getting the vegetables and having the area, that was one of the challenges, waiting and having to wait on the paperwork and the process. Another challenge that we faced was getting the word out. When we first started with these lots, a lot of people wasn't familiar with them or wasn't involved. And since COVID, the vacant lots and putting these parks in them have really became such a need to have. So, it got a lot of organizations and a lot of more people involved, and a lot of more awareness of having these lots and what they can bring to the community and what they can do for beautifying and cutting out on the loitering and the trash and things like that. Because I'm going to knock on wood and say that out of all the lots that we haven't had any vandalism. They haven't, they're not tearing up the beds and the different things that we put in there. They utilize it. They have events. They do clean the lot. So, it was really important to get the community involved. And we were glad we did that, because it made them feel like, they had some skin in the game and something at stake. So they really value and take care of the lots. Some of our solutions that we had to overcome and find were, being proactive. Really just staying involved with the process, reaching out to individuals, letting them know what's going on, holding the different workshops and the different events, like what's on this slide now. These are some of the events and programs and projects that we put on in the lots. We have Jazz in the Gardens, which we've had for 8 years now. The councilman Knauer, his band plays. We have school. We give out school supplies. We do a haunted house in the gardens. You can go to the next slide. Okay. And so that's just a list of the different events and things like that we do. And so let's see. And so our future plans is to extend this into more communities. Our future plans is to develop a land trust to be able to oversee and house the land, to preserve it and make sure it stays with the mindset of the parks and what we design it as, and to just continue on educating the community and educating individuals on the importance of having these spaces to be able to walk in your community and read a book. We put free library houses on every lot. And so, just to continue on and just spread the knowledge and get other communities involved and get parks up in communities. That's our future plans.
Thank you, Erika. What an inspiration, really. That's no small measure of volunteer effort involved in the projects you just described. And as somebody in the chat pointed out, it's a lot of volunteer capacity to manage those spaces. So thank you for all you do. We're going to hand it over to Marge Misak. My apologies for the snafu on the order a minute ago. So Marge, who is a consultant with Community Land Trusts after having run one for many, many years, is going to go over green space and land trusts.
Thank you, Linda. And actually, excuse me, that was probably a good reverse order, because in many ways, what you've seen with Erika's very inspiring story is kind of an example of really a community land trust that grew up from the community grassroots in ways that probably maybe Erika didn't envision from the beginning when she started with one lot, but then has expanded it to many lots. And so then I think the question that she's facing with her nonprofit is, how does that grow and become a sustainable organization that secures land for urban agriculture, urban green spaces for the long term. And so I've been doing community land trust work for over 20 years and started the first community land trust in Cleveland. And most of the work that I do, I'm working now with actually the land bank in Franklin County in Columbus that is developing a large community land trust that is mostly focused on housing, but community land trusts can be used. Here's the definition of them. They're nonprofit corporations that hold land on behalf of a place-based community. And you saw all of the really very neighborhood, place-based, community-based efforts that Erika's doing, while serving as the long-term steward for many different community uses. And today we're going to talk about community land trust in relation to urban green spaces. And particularly, I think those relate to urban agriculture or community gathering spaces. And this topic has come up, it came up in the Vital Neighborhoods, come up a couple of times, I think, in the Sustainable Cleveland initiatives. And it has been a part of the Vital Neighborhoods conversation. And last year, just as the pandemic was hitting, Brett Joseph and I did a workshop on community land trust for the Vital Neighborhoods group. And it was about green space and land trusts. So there's been some interest in following that up. And where it comes down to is this sense that land trusts become a way to hold land in more parcels than just one. So, as Jason was describing the process of and Lindale of disposition of land bank parcels going to either individuals, businesses, or potential nonprofits, it's often a one-by-one parcel. And Erika's now described a great project where they started with one and then they said, oh, but this need goes beyond our neighborhood. It goes into many different neighborhoods. And community land trusts are a way to hold many parcels in many different areas, and not necessarily then do the projects on those spaces, but to hold that land for those community needs for the long term. So there's been some interest in following up on that idea. We've had some meetings. We've met with the planning department in the city of Cleveland. It would really take a community-driven effort and cooperation from the city to make that happen. It could start in a neighborhood or neighborhoods, something like an expansion of Erika's effort, or it could be a much larger effort. And I think the sense is that with the new city administration coming on board next year, that would be the time to, really consider pushing this effort. Today, I really can't get into sort of how does a community land trust work, governance structure, operations, and so on. We've sort of done that workshop, and I'm happy to do that again at some point and continue to work with the group. But what I want to do instead is give you a few examples of how it might work for green space projects. And give you a sense of the value. So the value for a land trust with green space projects is twofold. We know that there's over 250 community gardens in the city of Cleveland, for instance. From a local project's point of view, what you get from a community land trust holding the title, holding the title to that land underneath your project is long-term access to your land for your project. Right now, the city is mostly giving out 1-year licenses for land or for community gardens or 5-year leases. And there's a sense that for gardens, for many community projects, there needs to be a much longer term that communities have access to that land because you're building up the soil for community gardens or because you're doing a lot of capital improvements to that land. And you need much more long-term tenure to that land. From the point of view of the community or the city, you need what we would call in the land trust movement stewardship. You need to know that someone is managing those leases and and those licenses, that they're performing well, that you're not leaving, that garden group doesn't cease to exist, and then the land, think about, frankly, some of the hoop houses that are kind of lying around unused on city parcels. And I think that's one of the city's concerns about long-term tenure. If things go south, what happens to a parcel? And a land trust can become that sort of intermediary group that makes sure that things keep happening on that land. And it's mission-based. It's got the mission of holding title to that land for a particular need, and particularly for green space needs. So if you can go, probably not to the next, go 2 more slides to the Dudley neighborhoods. So what I'm going to do is just give you, I probably want to just do 2 of the examples, the 3 that I have. In addition to hearing Erika's story of what is essentially is a community land trust, maybe not the board structure that a classic community land trust would have, but the idea of a grassroots community effort that holds land for community-based needs. And that's the key idea of a community land trust. And there are a lot of different ways to structure it. And what I want to do is just give you 2 examples from around the country of some projects that give us a sense of, we could do this in Cleveland if we wanted to do it on a larger scale. And there are different ways you can do it. Community land trusts are a really flexible tool for holding land for long-term community needs. This is an example of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative you may have heard of in Boston. It's been going on, they started in the 1980s, of people in the community taking control of their neighborhood and their land. And I think their saying was, take a stand, own the land, when there was a lot of dumping in their neighborhood, and literally they were being dumped on as a neighborhood. And they have a community land trust in the 1 mile square Dudley, in the Dudley Street neighborhood, and the land trust is Dudley Neighbors Initiative. So one of the projects that they did was, I believe they actually have some community gardens that are on community land trust land, but they also did this Dudley greenhouse. It was on the former site of an abandoned automotive garage, so it was contaminated. They couldn't build housing on it. It's a 10,000 square foot commercial greenhouse. The total development cost, as you can see, was $1.5 million. They basically own the land for it. They helped to put the project together. They're not developers, though, as an initiative. They helped to bring the partners together. And then they lease that land and the greenhouse to the food project. So they don't run it. They aren't greenhouse operators. The food project is. But they continue to own that land, and which means they own the control of what happens on that parcel for the very long term. And as a community, if the food project says, we're not going to do this anymore, they can then say, what else is going to happen here? And what needs to happen here for the good of the community? And so then it's also, it's a community-based space. It becomes a job creator. It's an incubator. There's a whole lot of good things that happen from that. Next slide, please. Probably one more example, so we have some time for questions. Neighbor Space in Chicago, very different kind of example. It's a urban land trust. I'm not sure I would call it a community land trust because the structure is not as community-based in terms of its operations, but it was created, it's an urban land trust in Chicago for preservation of established community gardens. It's funded by the city of Chicago, Cook County, the county there, and the Forest Preserve, which is like our metro parks. So a lot of public funding went into it. Keep that in mind, it is possible. And what they basically do is, Chicago has a lot of community gardens. They're on parcels of land where people don't have secure tenure. They don't know that next year they're going to be able to garden in that space. And if that sounds familiar to gardeners, that happens a lot. So they would look at those gardens and make decisions about could we bring them into the land trust, where gardeners would then have secure access to that land for the long term. It's always going to be a garden. Those gardeners may come and go, but it's going to be a garden. And that's good for neighborhoods. So it's good for gardeners, individual gardeners, families that are able to access the food from that garden, but it's also important for neighbors to have access to that garden for the long term. So these are some of the decisions to acquire a garden that Neighbor Space uses. Feasibility for site acquisition, can we actually get control of it? Evidence of the long-term viability of the garden. They really want to say, is there already a structure in place to manage it, because they don't manage the gardens? Is there stakeholder support? Are there people that care about this space and taking care of it? The environmental integrity of the property, and if you've been to other workshops, you have some sense of what that would mean. And then they would acquire the gardens through either owning them outright, which is fee simple title, or long-term leases. They themselves would get a lease to the garden. And then they actually have agreements with garden groups, because usually there's a lot of nitty-gritty details in terms of putting this kind of thing together. But you can't have if you have a lease with someone, they have to be a legally incorporated entity. And most garden groups aren't. So you might have an agreement with the garden group. But underlying that is Neighbor Space, which has a mission for gardening, urban agriculture, holding land for these groups. And that's kind of one of the things I think that that's really kind of the key difference to think about in terms of thinking about a community land trust for green space or urban agriculture needs, is that sense that the sense that this is the mission and this is why they're holding title, and the uses may come and go, the people operating them may come and go, or they may not, depending on what they are. But there is this underlying group, and that group then, as I've given you two examples, could be a group that does some other things, a community land trust that also does housing, that also does maybe some commercial space. Or it could be a group that's really dedicated to the green space uses. Lots of ways to imagine it. And so what I really wanted to give you was a sense that if there's a will to do this in Cleveland, there are a lot of examples around the country, and there's certainly Erika's really inspiring example of how to begin. So thank you very much.
Marge,
Yes.
could you just really quickly, tell us what the third one was, even if you don't.
Yes, we have just a minute. So in Philadelphia, this is a Philadelphia example. So the Neighborhood Gardens Trust. Philadelphia has, they acquire properties very similarly to Chicago. They might own them, or they might have long-term leases. They might have short-term agreements with garden groups, all kinds of ways that you can structure this legally. They actually provide a lot more help, I guess, to garden groups than Chicago probably, because Chicago has other intermediaries. The way we have OSU Extension to help organize garden groups, Chicago has that kind of organization. Neighborhood Gardens Trust is probably that group for a lot of gardens in Philadelphia. So they provide liability insurance with some technical assistance. They can assist with capital improvements. You want to get the grant, and this is, I think, one of the really valuable things about this long-term tenure is, someone owns that land for this use. So you can get that grant to put up your fence, to get your shed, to get your hoop house, and the entity that's granting that money knows someone else is going to make sure there's a use for that. Use is going to continue, even if that garden group is a little less, it may not continue. And so then they have as we move forward with this, they have an incredible priority acquisition plan to look at things like, let's look at the whole city and say, where are group gardens lacking? Where do we need to prioritize acquisition of space? So it is both a deep down dive of where's the community interest, the neighborhood groups that are willing and interested in doing this, and a larger picture from a planning perspective of where do we need to make sure that this kind of thing, that gardens exist or community spaces exist where they don't already. So yes, thank you, Linda.
Thank you to all our presenters. I did notice that in the chat at the moment, there's really only one question, but I do want to point out before I share what it is that the Mount Pleasant neighborhood did give a shout out to Erika as their inspiration for a project they did in Mount Pleasant. So it's really hopefully like music to your ears, Erika, knowing that you have been a model and an inspiration for others. And then the one question, though, is really for you, Erika, and it is on that point about how you build volunteer capacity, because I think what's interesting about Marge's example with the Community Land Trust is that's usually there's an organization with staff, right? So they have the ability to provide all those resources, technical assistance, et cetera, because they're an organization. You are a nonprofit, but my guess is that you are scrounging daily for resources, and most of that meaning people. So, what's your secret? How do you enroll others, and how do you keep the maintenance on all those properties that you now are in charge of happening?
Okay, so I just keep the community, and I reach out to organizations. There's quite a few different organizations that do a lot of volunteering. I have quite a few individuals who have been volunteering for quite a few years. And then we get the community out. We do a lot of talking with them. We, have snacks and food and things like that at the event. And we do things to try to keep them involved. Like when we're writing grants, try to get little stipends to be able to give a few dollars to some individuals, just things like that. Just trying to keep people involved and working with organizations.
No small task, for sure. There is another question now for Marge about whether anyone is currently working to create a green community land trust model in Cleveland. So I'll let you answer that, Marge.
Yeah, so we've been talking about it a bit in the Vital Neighborhoods group that's part of the of Sustainable Cleveland, and it's kind of been an on and off discussion. And so I would say that would be Marka Fields is the contact person with that. So I would say that's probably a good group to, and Brett Joseph is co-convener of that, and I think he's on this panel or on the he's here in the session today. That's probably a good place for us to kind of get together and begin. We've talked a bit about what in looking at Brooke's question, what level do you start at? Because I think the question is, should this be something like, a citywide initiative, or should it be building on something like Erika's group that becomes, a little bit of board structure change, maybe Erika and I are going to talk, for instance, after, sometime in the near term. Do you shift to a, and I see Marcus posting in the chat, the connection to Vital Neighborhoods. I think that, there's a whole lot of questions then that, but that's probably maybe I'll leave it with, that's a great place to start, is connect with the Vital Neighborhoods group. I think our sense is city planning has to get on board, city community development has to get on board, because as Jason said, they're the ones that own the land now. So are they willing to think about, more than the 1 year, 5 year agreements that they currently have to actually turning over ownership? And is there a viable structure and a fundable structure that we can develop for something like this? So
Thank
it's
you,
a lot of
Marge.
partners.
Yeah. In the last minute, I just want to say, I know we're heading to lunch really quickly, but I'm glad you mentioned Marka, who actually has kept that conversation going for, honestly, I want to say it's at least a decade. It was something that came out of an early summit, one of the sustainability summits. And really, Marka, your loyalty and faithfulness to this discussion, you should get a statue or a plaque or something
Yes.
named after you, because it is commendable. And thank you for putting your contact information in the chat there, because really, for anybody who wants to really get engaged, Marka could use all the support she can muster, I'm sure. So with that, it's 11:45, and you all are getting an hour and 15-minute break. Any last minute comments, Kathy, before we leave the session?
No, other than I would just like to thank you, Linda, and all of our speakers today. Great information, and thank you to all of you.